What's up, everybody? Soren Baker here on Unique Access, and today we're joined by Tony A. Thank you for coming through.
Thank you for having me.
So this man right here, for those that don't know, has a very illustrious, layered, storied, phenomenal history of not only hip-hop in general, but West Coast specifically. We're going to get into a lot of that today, and then a lot of the things that he's working on. So for you coming up, I want to really get into the DJ and production side and the mixtape stuff that you did, because that's how I first heard of you.
Yes.
And then I really got a deeper appreciation for who you were, because I grew up in Maryland. I didn't have access to all the mixtapes. I would get them later, or I would see them later. But it was mainly through High C that I really was like, oh, this is the same guy that I'd been hearing about and got one or two tapes from, you know, when I was getting the Scandalous album. So obviously you have a much deeper storied history prior to that. So for you, what was it about the different elements of hip hop, and why was DJing more than rapping or being a b-boy or, you know, taking off in graffiti?
Well, because back then I truly believed that it required talent to be a DJ.
Okay.
I saw my very first DJ when I was 11 years old.
Right.
My very first job was selling records for a man named Steve Yano, a Japanese man from the city of Whittier. And I started selling vinyl from 11 years old till I was 13 years old. So popping was in. I was taught popping at a young age by Boogly Shrimp, Michael Chambers, Turbo from Breaking.
Right.
He's from my neighborhood. How I got my first job was by popping. So I was actually a popper before I actually became a DJ. I graduated from the 6th grade. I was 12 years old. My brother, who DJed at an all-crip club in Long Beach called Grand Central Station. This club at one point had 3 different names. It had Noah's Ark, Infinity, Grand Central Station. Every crip from 21st and Elm, Insane Crip, used to go to this club in Long Beach. My brother used to DJ there. So I used to always see him get dressed. So, you know, he would always buy vinyl from where I sold records at. And I would ask, where are you going to go play him at? I DJ at a club. He would DJ Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So one day I said, hey, man, I want to go with you. So he tells me, well, if you get your grades up and you graduate, I'll take you with me.
Okay.
So I said, okay, cool. The day I graduated, I had a 3-piece suit from Kmart. And I said, I'm ready. And he said, get dressed. And I said, I want to go like this. So I went. Now, that was the first time that I actually saw a DJ in a club.
Okay.
I was 12 years old, and I actually had no business being in a club, man.
Of course.
But from that point on...
Especially not that club.
Yes. From that point on, I wanted to be a DJ. I saw how he controlled the crowd.
Right.
You know, and the rest is history. After that, my second DJ that I saw was a guy named King Tim. He was the brother of the owner of VIP Records, Calvin Anderson, Cletus Anderson, off of PCH Martin Luther King.
Right.
I saw him DJ there, and then I saw Grandmaster Flash DJ on TV.
Okay.
And from that point on, DJing to me was everything. And for me, I went home, practiced on a house stereo. My fader was round, the house stereo. I didn't have no scratch pad. Put the record, the needle on the record, and I was scratching another one, Bites of Dust, Good Times, Bullet Chic, and not knowing I was scratching the bottom of my parents' records.
Because you didn't have the pad.
Exactly.
Right.
I didn't know anything about that. But scratching came naturally to me, and then eventually blending. So after I got into DJing, I only knew of a few people that were DJing. Not everyone was doing it like the way they're doing it now.
Right.
But everybody was popping. Everybody was breaking. So that's what separated me and separated other DJs from everyone else. Because back then, it actually took skill.
Oh, yeah.
It took skill. So to me...
It's a lot hard. You know, people forget because, of course, like even the faders, they didn't exist, or you had to jury rig it or whatever to create it.
Yes.
Because they didn't have, that equipment didn't exist. It was an innovation. So going from that to where you go from that into making tapes, like how did it go from a passion into you thinking into, oh, I want to make this into a business or something that I think I could do, that I enjoy doing, that I want to see what I can make of myself as?
It's funny because I had already won like battles of the DJs, practicing at home. I came from a very strict family where I literally had to sneak out of the house just to enter some of these battles of the DJs.
Okay.
I'm 17, 18, 19 years old, still had a strict mother that you're not going to go anywhere. So I literally had to sneak out of the house, sneak on my equipment, and win. Come back home without them ever even knowing.
Okay.
I got reacquainted with Steve in 1987. I had worked with them from I was 11 years old to 13, and then I saw him again when I was 19 in 1987. That's when I first met Dre, I first met Jinx, and I first met Eazy there at the swap meet. So I hadn't seen him in maybe about 6 years.
Okay.
I had found out that Dr. Dre was doing mixtapes for Steve. I had heard of a mixtape called 85 Live, which I was just blown away. And then I heard 86 in the mix, and I heard Steve say something about, I heard Dr. Dre say something about Steve at the Roadium. So I was putting two and two together. That's Dr. Dre from the World Class Wrecking Crew. That's Steve from the Roadium. That's the only Steve that I know that's selling there.
Right.
So I went.
Got to be the guy.
Yeah, it's got to be the guy. I went out there. I just happened to meet Dre that same day. A couple of months later, Dre actually asks me, because he had already seen me DJ there at the swap meet. Steve always carried turntables. He asked me, he goes, hey, I'm getting tied up doing these records. Would you want to take over doing the mixtapes for Steve? We'll still rap on them.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I was honored. I said, hell yeah, to have a guy like that pass the baton to me and say, pretty much, you want to take over the mixtapes. Now, all Dre was getting paid for those mixtapes was $200.
Okay.
I started at $120, and Steve would tell me, every tape, I'll give you an extra 20 until I reach 200.
Okay.
So Dre would come to my house, Eazy would come to my house, Q would come to my house, even L.A. Dre at times came to my house just for the ride. But all those guys came to my house and they rapped off of my mixtapes. I ended up actually doing more mixtapes than Dre did.
Right, right.
But it's funny how nobody ever actually even mentions my mixtapes that he would rap on, or Cube or those guys would rap on. But yeah, you know, I didn't know it was going to be a business. I didn't know that from 87 to 88 that my name would be out there in the street, that I would be considered ghetto fabulous, you know, that people would tell me, man, you're that guy on those mixtapes, man, you're that guy on the mixtape, man. Even to this day, at 50 years old, I go to Arizona, go to Albuquerque, go to Colorado, go to New York, and people say, you're that mixtape guy. And I'm still shocked, you know, even to this day.
Well, in Maryland, you know, the two that I had heard, and it was much later, the two names, I knew it was Dr. Dre's mixtapes and yours. So what do you think Dre's tapes did that was phenomenal in your opinion, and what yours did that have made it to today where they still resonate with people?
Well, Dre's mixing was just so dope. You know, it's cutting and scratching. See, people have to understand that back then, no one, and if they say they knew, they're lying. No one knew that it was a 4-track. Everybody thought he had 4 turntables. That's what everybody thought. I don't know how you could think that, because I DJed on 2 turntables and there's no way I can go to the next turntable, you know. But everybody thought he had 4 turntables. Even I did. In 1987, when Steve finally came over, JJ Fad had just dropped Supersonic. That was my first mixtape, and it was called Breakdown. And I said, how are we going to do it? I don't have 4 turntables. I said, I'm going to show you. Brought a little box, the Tascam Portal 1. And that's what he showed me how to do the 4-track mixtapes. Now, what made mine different was not only that I have Quik, High C, Second to None, Tone Loc, Young MC that weren't on Dre's, was because I would make sentences from scratching.
Right.
And Dre didn't do that as much. He had his own style, I had my own style. And that's what separated us, was our styles. So.
And then obviously mentioning High C as your career progressed, and then with the Scandalous album, this was back in the day where the DJ sometimes produced, sometimes didn't, but I always remember it was like High C, and then you were on the cover too, and your name was on the album cover. So how did that come about to where you produced half the album and you got, you know, the picture on the cover and your name? Because I think a lot of people, when they look at it, they always affiliate High C with Quik, and it's not, I don't think people understand the amount that you did with Scandalous. So what?
There were 12 songs on that album. I produced 9.
Right.
I actually produced a total of 11, but we couldn't clear 2 of the samples.
Okay.
So High C calls Quik, and then that's when he did the 3, and I did 9.
Okay.
But how I met High C was actually, he sold at the Roadium.
Okay.
A lot of people didn't know that. I remember seeing this one guy. He was about 17 years old. He was still in high school, and he would always come when I would be there at the Swami chilling with Steve. Steve, is Tony here yet? And I would look at him, and he had dookie braids, you know. I remember he had his thick corduroy pants, not the Levi ones, but the ones from the Compton Indoor. And he would say, "Oh, he's not here yet." And I was like, "Who's that?" He goes, "Oh, this is One Blood. He's from Compton. He's from Treetop, Pyaroo. And, you know, he wants to rap on the mixtapes." I go, "How does it sound?" He goes, "He kind of sounds a little bit like Eazy, but, you know, we got Eazy on him. What do we need him for?"
Okay.
So I was like, "Oh, okay." Well, when Dre told me that they were no longer going to be able to rap on the mixtapes, they were getting ready to go on tour, I said, "Shoot, you know, we need somebody to rap on him." He said, "Well, go talk to that dude." So I went down there, met him. He was nice and everything. Came to my house. I put on some instrumentals on the Ultimate Breaks and Beats. I was cutting back and forth, watching him rap. He had a rap called "I'm Hard," and I'll be honest with you, I didn't think it was that hard. I wasn't really feeling his rap style because I know he was a youngster.
Okay.
But the very first show we did was at Centennial High School. He actually asked me, "Hey man, I'm performing at Centennial High School in the gym. Would you want to come to Compton?" I was like, "Yeah, cool, man." Took my equipment over there. I DJ'd. I liked the way he rapped there live. So I said, "Come on, man." So the very first rap that he did was off an instrumental on a mixtape called A Bass Station, which was in '88, and he rapped the Funky Comedina.
Okay.
So, and then
Interesting choice.
yeah, it was weird because after that, I did a house mixtape for Steve, and he rapped to house music. You know, so we were trying to find his little niche.
Yeah, I never heard that one.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
and it was weird because he rapped to everything. I mean, he even rapped to "Princess of the Posse" by Queen Latifah. So I had him rap to everything. When we finally found his style, that's when I said, "We're gonna go with it." And what happened was we did a mixtape. And since I already had somewhat of a street name out there, I told Steve, "Let's name this mixtape High C. Let's get his name out there." So we did a song called "I'm Not Your Puppet." We sampled "I'm Your Puppet." And really how we did that, I had 2 records and I was cutting back and forth. He was just freestyling in my house. We were getting ready to do a mixtape. Steve heard it. Steve, being a Japanese man from the city of Whittier, growing up around Mexicans, he loved oldies.
Okay.
So he thought, that shit is dope. Let's do a song for the mixtape. We had never done that. So I said, okay, cool. So I just, on my mixer, I looped a bottom beat and I just rolled the record. So for the hook, I just did some scratching on there. And that song took off on the streets. Steve would tell me later on that tape actually went gold on the streets. You know,
Okay.
So we did another mixtape called Scandalous, where he said, let's do another oldie. So all I did was flip those same records over and we had Sitting in the Park. So soon after that, we had a guy that came to the swap meet, had the High C mixtape, and he tells Steve, who did this mixtape? And Steve thought it was somebody else was gonna bust us for selling bootlegs. So he said, he did it. So he points at me and I said, yeah, but he sells them. So he said, well, who rapped on it? And I said, some guy, he's a blood from Compton, and he's selling way back there. So we went over there. He brought High C back, and he said, I want to have a meeting with you guys. I work for Disney. We just opened up a record label called Hollywood Records, and I want to sign you guys. I want you guys to be the first rap act. We had a meeting with them, and they signed us for $140,000 off of a mixtape.
It's pretty good.
And I didn't even know how to produce.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think you did a good job.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Because one of the things I always remember with the how Granddaddy IU had used the same
Yes.
sample on something new. So I remember I had that familiarity with it already. But then one of the things that I really liked about this Scandalous record was that it had the gangsterism and all that, but High C, like Eazy-E, had a lot of humor to his music in a way that was through Eazy-E, but really starting to gain a little traction. You know, Quik, Second to None, had a little bit, but I think High C brought the most of it. So for you as a producer, like once you were into making the album, why do you think that with hardcore stuff, the humor really works so well?
Because to be quite honest with you, that was our personalities.
Okay.
All we did was talk shit, cuss, and talk perverted. That's all we did. So that's what came out. But in reality, one thing that the public does not know, that half of that album that we originally did was a lot slower and was a lot dirtier. We got called in by Michael Eisner. He was running all of Disney during that time. And he calls us in, and he heard a song called Two at a Time.
Okay.
And on the original version, it says, can you take two dicks at a time? And he's reading us the lyrics. And he says, I don't like these lyrics. And I said, why? What's wrong with them? That's just us. And he said, well, when I'm reading it, I'm envisioning a porn.
Right.
This is Disney. And then I said, well, that's just us. And he said, well, have you guys ever done this? That's what he asked us. And I said, yeah. You know, so we're just writing what we've been through. And he says, well, I have $80,000 that you guys will change what I want changed. And I said, okay.
We'll have it to you tomorrow.
Yeah, so he pointed out the songs. It was 5 songs that he wanted changed. And he actually even included any trip in the world that we wanted to go, all expenses paid.
Really?
Yes, 10 days in Hawaii. I wanted to go to Egypt, Australia, Europe. High C wanted to go to Oakland.
Oakland?
That's the truth. That's the truth. And Michael Eisner actually even laughed, and he said, I'll drive you to Oakland. He said, if you guys can't make up your mind, he says, I'll want to pick something up. So we couldn't make up our mind. So Hawaii, all expenses paid. I got 40, he got 40, and we changed the record.
That's amazing. One other thing with Hollywood, because at the time, the other main group that they were pushing through was Organized Confusion.
Organized Confusion, yes.
So with that and being so dramatically different from what you guys were doing with High C, like what did you see now looking back that was good about being on that label, that was bad? Like what influence did Organized Confusion have on you guys as far as the business, the behind the scenes that you guys experienced that they might have experienced similar or different things?
Well, and I believe I'm speaking for them as well. First of all, cool ass dudes. I love their music. I loved everything about their records. We got along great. There was a guy there named Funkin' Klein.
Yes.
Okay.
Dave.
Yes. He signed a lot of the East Coast groups. Well, he even went and got Raw Fusion.
Right.
DJ Fuse and Money B.
Yep. Live from the Styletron.
Yes. I will say this, and I'm not going to hold back. Hollywood Records didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Okay.
Period. They had a bunch of college kids that have never worked a record label, but they had a degree and they got a job. We would literally go into Detroit, Wisconsin, Philadelphia, everywhere we went, Chicago, we would walk into stores. Either they were mom and pop stores or the Warehouse, Tower Records, Sam Goody's, etc. With camcorders. Do you guys have the new High C Tony album? No. Every single store, we would take back those videotapes and we would give it to them and tell them to do their job. You know, AMG, Second to None, Quik, all went gold. I truly believe that our record should have went gold, and it didn't even go half.
Well, that leads me to another point on this topic, which was the thing. I knew this wasn't true because I read everything on the credits, but I think the perception, and AMG falls into this too, that the perception was that AMG and High C in particular were Quik artists, and that wasn't true.
No.
So why do you think that perception was out there, and how and why do you think that impacted you and High C?
Well, Quik's album came out first before all of us.
Quik is the name.
Yes, and then since everybody was on that record, eventually when they started coming out with theirs, oh, that's Quik's group. That was just the word on the street.
Gotcha.
Oh, that's Quik's group. Yeah, they were on the Quik album, or they were on that Quik song. Oh yeah, like everybody thought that Quik did Bitch Better Have My Money.
Right.
You know, everybody thought that he even though he did sample, because he did produce it on the SP1200, and I still have those original floppy disks, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
you
wow.
know, he did produce all of that, but a lot of those ideas were by D and KK, Second to None. They would just bring the record, sample this, sample that, and he put it together. I know D and K like to say those were a lot of ideas, and it's true. A lot of times, maybe you might not know how to work the drum machine, but because he did it, people had always said, oh, those are Second to None artists, or that's AMG's artists, because he would bring them all along on tour, and he would be the headliner. But I will say this, okay, and I will say in front of Quik, I love the dude, we're good friends, but many times we would go to Texas, and Bitch Better Have My Money was doing better than Quik was the name, and they wanted AMG to headline.
Okay.
And there would be problems there.
Okay.
We would go up north, Second to None, if we wanted. That's the biggest song out here. There will be guys that had problems because they wanted Second to None to headline. And I think that was partially the beginning of the bumping of the heads.
Gotcha.
So, but you know, I remember when High C first came to me and we started working, I asked, how come you're not over there with Quik? How come he's not doing your stuff? You know, we were almost done. We couldn't clear samples. Quik comes in and does a couple of the songs. But he's just like, oh, you know what? I'm trying to break away and I'm trying to do my own little thing. Cool. But yeah, a lot of people always thought that, even to this day, there are some people that still think that Quik even produced a High C album.
Right. No, that's one of the reasons why I was excited to be able to interview you, because that was, other than knowing very little at the time about your legacy as far as the mixtapes and the swap meet stuff, I knew you from that album as my real getting to know your work. And I always, you know, my friends in Maryland, you know, they would, some of them were very studious like me and would read everything, but the other ones were like, oh man, you know, that's Quik's dude or whatever. And I'd be like, nah, Tony A did the majority of that album. Like, nah. So I always find that interesting that, you know, people don't really look at the credits, because, you know, like you were saying about Quik producing stuff that D and KK may have given him, like Quik still produced it.
Yes.
Like it's people also don't understand beat making and producing are not the same thing, or ideas and producing are not the same thing. So it's very intriguing, to say the least, to see the perception of things versus, you know, the reality.
Right.
And one of the things that we're here obviously too is your new documentary that's coming out soon, about Roadium and
Yes.
and the swap meet and the mixtapes, and how that legacy created a foundation for helping explode West Coast rap as we know it today.
Yes.
So what is the main reason that you wanted to do the documentary?
The main reason why I chose to do this Roadium mixtape documentary is to not allow Steve Yano's name to get lost in the West Coast hip hop history. People have asked me in interviews, do you think West Coast hip hop started at the Roadium? And I say, no, absolutely not. But I will say that the Roadium swap meet was a huge cornerstone to West Coast hip hop, and I'll tell you why. No one else can say that they've had Dre, Eazy-E, Ice Cube, Ren, Crazy D, JJ Fad, Michelle rap on their mixtapes.
Right.
On the mixtape. They may have one here, one there, but to have an entire library, a collection, and many of them were done by me with those individuals rapping on my mixtapes. Now, what makes them so unique? People tell me, well, what makes it so unique? Why? Okay, I understand Steve. I understand you don't want to allow his name to get lost in West Coast hip hop history. He sold them. He helped a lot of independent artists.
Right.
But why the mixtapes? First of all, every artist, Tone Loc, JJ Fad, Young MC, High C, Quik, Second to None, AMG, not including the NWA, every single one of those artists that rapped on those mixtapes went gold or platinum. Who else can say that?
Right.
And many of those raps and many of those artists rapped on those mixtapes before they ever had record deals. And many of these mixtapes were before the NWA album and the Eazy-E album. So you actually heard them there first,
Right.
before then.
And I think it's important for people to realize that at the time, you know, rap was based in New York and dominated by New York,
Yes.
and the labels were essentially, other than Priority, which was going to break through with Eazy-E and NWA, there weren't any labels here. And people forget that, to where you had, you know, your Def Jam, your Tommy Boy, your Cold Chillin', your Next Plateau, your Profile. All these record labels are in New York so that those artists, you know, can go shop a demo, or,
Yes.
you know, someone can hear them at a party or whatever it is. Whereas out here, you know, the mixtapes really help spread it way more than anything else, which is ironic because East Coast usually got more notoriety for their
Yes.
mixtapes. But these mixtapes that Dre and that you did really spread the word as far as things, and they even spread to Maryland, because I had a couple of them, not that many, but that's how I got to know and get familiar and hear, you know, the Fat Girl records early, or like the fact that there was this pre-NWA work that was going on that wasn't World Class Wrecking Crew, because World Class Wrecking Crew was my introduction to Dre and Yella.
Yes.
And then I heard these mixtapes, and then I heard Boys in the Hood. So I was, you know,
Yes. I'll give you a quick story, for an example, on how these mixtapes help, if you would, I don't want to say help make them because they were already talented, these rappers, but help their career, if you will. I remember I'm just sitting there at the swap meet and I'm leaning up against Steve's record crates, and there's a guy comes up with a Delicious vinyl, 12-inch, and he gives it to Steve and he says, "Hey, Orlando sent you." Steve tells him and he goes, "Oh yeah," and he goes, "So this is the record?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "I'll check it out." He goes, "If it's any good, I'll put it on a mixtape. If it sells, I'll have you come back and rap on it."
Okay.
And he was like, "Okay, cool." So he left. And Steve gives it to me and he goes, "Go home and check it out." And I go, "But he gave it to you." He goes, "But go home and check it out. Let me know what you think." I said, "All right." So I cracked it open, and as soon as I heard the very first word, I was like, "Oh shoot." I let it play. I skip. I called him up when he got home from the swamp. I said, "Steve, we need to get this guy on a mixtape." And he said, "Really?" He goes, "Is that good?" "Yes, bro." I said, "I think it's the shit." He said, "Okay, I'll call him up and I'll let Orlando know that we want him to rap." That was Young MC Bust a Move.
Okay.
And it wasn't even out yet. We put it on the mixtape first. But many stories. I remember when King T wanted to be on those mixtapes. He didn't approach me, but he approached Steve. "I want to rap on your mixtapes." Because if you will, that was our social media. That was our YouTube. That's how we got our music out there. The only radio station we had out here was KD, and you had to get good reception.
Right.
To even listen to hip hop. And if you didn't, the Roadium was another outlet to hear good music. And if you didn't want to buy the single, if you didn't want to buy the album, then you buy a compilation, if you will, mixtape. And the first 3 minutes was always cutting and scratching, unless you bought a 85 live, 86 in the mix, or an 88 boom and bass, where it's all mixed all the way through.
Right.
So.
And then for the documentary, what are you showing and doing that's different than other documentaries we've seen, or the storytelling? What's going to make it significant?
Well, I think part of the difference is that, number one, when people hear a West Coast hip hop history, here's what they think: NWA and Death Row.
Right.
This is a little bit before that. Okay, and everybody who's in it, like Arabian Prince, Lonzo, Clientele, people that you may know, are all, if you will, saying that this is true. They're putting their stamp of approval on it, that this is true. And Steve's finally getting his recognition. We like to say that it's more than a documentary, because we've seen documentaries where I've seen people have been interviewed for hours, and in a documentary they only get about 10 seconds.
Right.
You're going to hear actual stories of people, and it's not boring because in between we have inserts that will take people back. So we like to say it's more than a documentary. It's just not somebody sitting in a chair and just talking in a studio. We're actually in hoods. Okay. And we're getting stories from people that people have never heard before. So this will only add to West Coast hip hop history that they have never heard. So I truly believe, because the 5 people that I've allowed them to see a little snippet of it have all told me, it's great. This is going to do really, really well. I'm excited because this is my first directing project. My boy, my right-hand man, John Elkins from JE Visuals, he helped me bring this dream to fruition. And to be able to honor a man like Steve, a Japanese man who had his, if you will, his roots at the Roadium, and it helped spread hip hop throughout the West Coast, he deserves recognition.
Right.
And he's going to be news to a lot of people. Who is this guy? The mixtape, where Dre did mixtapes, where Eazy rapped on them. That's going to be the new element that's going to be introduced to people that maybe they might have not have ever heard before.
Right. And that's why it's important.
Yes, sir.
So make sure you guys check out this documentary, man. Tony A. in the building. Thank you for coming through to Unique Access.
Thank you for having me, brother. Pleasure.
Yeah. Likewise.
Be sure to check out the History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
There will be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on Yo MTV Raps with NWA.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national
gangbang rappers.
The history of gangster rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the street. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The history of gangster rap in stores now.